cosmos, space, and time travel, medicine, robotics, science, and technology. Professor Michio Kaku, theoretical physicist, graduated from Harvard University summa cum laude and first in his physics class. Received his PhD in physics from the University of California at Berkeley. And now, professor of physics at City University of New York for 30 years. His goal? To complete Einstein's dream of a theory of everything, to derive an equation, to summarize all the physical laws of the universe. The co-founder of string field theory, author of the international bestsellers Hyperspace, Visions, and Parallel Worlds, and voted as one of the 100 smartest people in New York, profiling the latest cutting-edge developments in science, which revolutionize our world and touch our lives. Now, Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku.
This is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. On Science Fantastic, we profile the amazing, jaw-dropping scientific discoveries which are revolutionizing our world and touching our lives. And in this hour, hold on to your hats, we're going to bring on one of the nation's leading futurists of medicine. The book is called The Patient, not the Doctor. The Patient Will See You Now. The future of medicine is in your hands. We're going to bring on Dr. Eric Topol, one of the nation's leading cardiologists and professor of genomics. He was voted #1, the most influential physician executive in the United States back in 2012. He's written over 1,100 peer-reviewed medical articles, and he's currently at the Scripps Translational Science Institute in La Jolla, California. And the book, once again, is called The Patient Will See You Now. The future of medicine is in your hands. Do you realize that your cell phone, your simple cell phone, can have an attachment, and it can become literally a medical laboratory. It can analyze your blood. It can analyze for heart attacks. It can analyze your EKG. It can analyze the flu virus. One day it'll analyze even the Zika virus. All of that right in your cell phone with an attachment. Amazing. It'll detect cancer. It'll detect heart disease, diabetes, all of that in the privacy of your living room. And there you have it, a medical laboratory right in your cell phone that you can put in your medicine cabinet. And we're going to bring him on in a few moments. However, let me say once again that I'm always on the road. The book that I'll be talking about is, once again, The Future of the Mind, now in paperback form. Find out about all the incredible developments being done to decipher memory, to decipher the human thinking process. In fact, there's a PBS series that I'll be talking about the mind pretty soon, about all the incredible discoveries being made as we begin to connect a computer to the brain. And who's pioneering much of this research? The Pentagon. The Pentagon realizes that there's so many of our wounded warriors from Afghanistan and Iraq that have had brain injury. So why not connect their brain directly to a computer, which in turn can manipulate an Iron Man exoskeleton? In some sense, giving them the power not just of mobility, but eventually superpowers as well. All contained in my latest book, The Future of the Mind. Well, let's face it, we're not getting younger every year, we're getting older. And if you take a look at the aging of America, the aging of Europe, the aging of Asia, Japan, and China, you begin to realize that we're going to have an epidemic of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancers, heart disease, all the diseases of old people. And the digital revolution is now just beginning to meet the challenge. Do you realize that your cell phone can have a simple attachment on it, an attachment that will allow it to analyze your heartbeat, to look for evidence of heart disease. Not only that, but an attachment can be added so that your cell phone can analyze for the flu virus, for strep throat, heart failure, drugs, and liquid biopsies. Liquid biopsies may be able to eliminate the biopsies of old. Why do we have to go to the doctor's office at all? Why not have a laboratory in your living room Why not convert your cell phone into a microscope? Why not convert your cell phone into a cancer detector, into a device that can have biopsies? Well, think of the impact this would have. Not only would we have a healthier population, but it would reduce the cost of medical care. I mean, think about it for a moment. I went to the doctor's office last week, and we all know the torture that's involved. First of all, you have to request an appointment when the doctor is in rather than when he's on the golf course. Once you made that appointment, then of course you have to wait. I waited once 2 hours for the doctor to show up. And then all he does is do a quick check of your blood pressure, sometimes your heartbeat, and out you go out the door. Do you realize that leaving the doctor's office, you could die of a heart attack after being given a clean bill of health? You could leave the doctor's office with cancer growing in your body, and at the present time, there's not much we can do about it. But we also have the digital revolution. The digital revolution will allow you to analyze your heartbeat using computers, artificial intelligence, and if you have a heart attack in the future, we don't quite have it yet, but in the future, it will detect the heart attack, and even if you're unconscious, call for the doctor, call for the ambulance, all when you are having a heart attack. Think about that the next time you feel your chest feeling a certain amount of pain and compression. Well, once again, this is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Let's take a short commercial break. And after the break, we're going to talk about the future of digital medicine. The book is called The Patient Will See You Now. And once again, this is Dr. Michio Kaku. You can always give us a call at 866-323-2129. Be part of the fun. Give us a call at 866-323-2129. Leave your name, call letters of your radio station, and the city you're calling from, and maybe your thoughts will be heard on over 100 radio stations that carry Science Fantastic. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
As a business owner, or CEO for that matter, are you frustrated with the money you're wasting on advertising? How do I know it's being wasted? Because you see your advertising as an expense. I started my company because I was tired of seeing passionate business owners waste advertising dollars. So what if I could show you how to make your advertising a profit center in 30 days, guaranteed? I know what you're thinking. That's bull. Then challenge me. At no cost to you, I'll show you how to make your advertising a profit center, not an expense. If this is important to you, call me. I'm Dan Glaviano.
If you spend $10,000 to $80,000 a month on advertising, Dan will show you how to make your advertising a profit center, not an expense. Dan only works with one business in any given category. Find out if your category is still available. Visit gottacalldan.com. gottacalldan.com. That's gottacalldan.com.
Hello, I'm Roy Masters. In spite of the fact I dislike asking for financial support from my listeners, I realize the consequence of failing to do so. I will have denied my listeners the second chance to express the grace of paying forward the benefits they receive through my radio program and the Foundation of Human Understanding, the organization I founded over 50 years ago. Your support will make a vital difference with the pledge as little as 63 cents a day throughout this year. Consider a donation of $19.95 per month or whatever you can afford, and help me help others, especially our returning heroes. So for the sake of the military and millions of broken lives, if you haven't done so already, pay it forward. The benefits which you've received throughout the years from one crying in the wilderness. Go to FHU.com/donate. FHU.com/donate. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
Hello, here I am, Roy Masters, 55 years on talk radio and still saving lives. Please continue helping the Foundation of Human Understanding by simply donating $19.95 per month. Paying it forward plan will continue saving lives into the years to come. I'm a pioneer in helping our troops to overcome the ravages of PTSD without drugs. Go to FHU.com and then click on the donation page. That's FHU.com.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
You're listening to Science Fantastic.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. In this hour, we're going to talk about something that affects everybody, and that is the future of medicine. What will a visit to the doctor's office look like 5, 10, 15 years from now? With us today is one of the world's leading physicians and an expert on what is called digital medicine. You know, the joke used to be that digital medicine was what your doctor did when he checked your prostate gland. However, today, digital medicine has a completely different meaning because it's the pathway to the future. Dr. Eric Topol is a professor of genomics. He's a cardiologist at the Scripps Research Institute in La Jolla, California. In 2012, he was voted #1 most influential physician executive in the United States. And he's also the author of a best-selling book, The Creative Destruction of Medicine. Get that, creative destruction. In order to create something new, you have to, in some sense, destroy the old. We don't have blacksmiths anymore. We don't have wagon makers anymore. But no one cries about that either. Well, in the future, we will have digital medicine. And he's the author of an exciting new book, The Patient Will See You Now. The future of medicine is in your hands. How many times have we heard the expression, the doctor will see you now? Because you're at the mercy of the doctor and his or her secretaries. Well, The Patient Will See You Now is the title of his latest book. So, Eric, glad you could be on Science Fantastic.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be with you, Michio.
Well, the first question I always ask our guests is, how did you, as a youth, get interested in science?
Well, it's an interesting for me to reflect because I hadn't thought about it for quite a long time, but really it was because I had so many relatives that were dying at very young ages, and it led to a lot of curiosity as to why did this happen. So it made me start thinking about the biology of human beings and to pursue somehow that curiosity.
And did you finally find out a reason or perhaps a clue as to the origin of that fact?
Well, it got me into genetics and genomics quite early. In fact, when I was in college, I did a thesis on the prospects for gene therapy in man. It's taken a long time to us to get into genome editing now, but it was the idea that people had bad genes and were getting diseases like in my family at very young ages.
Okay, well, let's now talk about a visit to the doctor's office. I just went through that last week, and it's not a pleasant procedure. First of all,
not at all. Yeah.
First of all, you have to call the secretary, and the doctor has an appointment maybe 2-3 weeks in the future. You go there. I've waited sometimes up to 2 hours waiting for the doctor. And then once you go there, what do? You get an EKG, blood test, and blood pressure, and out the door. And then I realized that, well, in principle, I could even have a heart attack after leaving the doctor's office, getting a clean bill of health. So tell us a little bit about how you got interested now in the future of medicine.
Well, the big difference now is that we can get high-definition human beings. So whether it's with sensors that work through your smartphone to capture virtually every medical metric, or it's a genome sequence, or it's being able to do your own labs through your smartphone, all these different tools that gets each individual's data in their real world, rather than these one-off visits to a doctor in a very contrived setting. which clearly do not represent the real world as you just outlined. So being able to get your cardiogram at any time by touching sensors that are connected to your smartphone is an example of that. And it goes beyond capturing the data, because you can now have computer algorithms to interpret the data very accurately. And so you get the answer without ever having to go to a doctor. You go to the doctor now for guidance about your results rather than going to get these various tests on a one-off basis.
Now, as I understand it, the thesis of your book, The Patient Will See You Now, is that in the future you will own your own data. You will have power that you didn't have before, being at the mercy of a doctor and his appointment schedule. And this is democratizing medicine. Could you elaborate?
Exactly. That is because information is power, and because now patients, individuals will be generating their own data, not at the mercy of a doctor or a visit to a clinic, but rather, any time when at their convenience, or even passively without even pressing start. So that changes everything. That tilts the whole, what has been asymmetrical information towards the patient, towards the individual. And this is a power play that's going to be more and more emphasized over time, and so that each individual should own their data. That isn't the case today. Their doctors and hospitals own people's data in the United States in 49 out of the 50 states. And that has to change. But it's going to be forced because people will not be relying on the sacrosanct electronic records that are housed in doctors' offices and hospitals, but rather generate their own data. And certainly it should be a civil right that you have rights to your medical data.
Okay, well, let's break it down. When we look at our smartphone, we think of this marvelous device. We talk to it. It has our schedules and things like that. But what you're saying is your smartphone, in some sense, can also calculate your blood glucose, your blood pressure, and even sense your breath and saliva. So let's break it down. What kinds of attachments can you put on your cell phone such that it becomes, in some sense, a doctor's laboratory?
Right. Well, it'd be the patient laboratory as well. That's the difference, because everything's so eminently portable. So my favorite these days is that I can change a smartphone into a total body ultrasound, high-resolution device with imaging as good as the one that's in the hospital that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. I even put on Twitter my head-to-toe ultrasound.
Is that right?
Sparked a lot of interest, actually. But, the fact is, as a cardiologist, that I can image my heart, my patient's heart, through my smartphone, exquisite images, and even do color flow mapping of the blood in real time. So that's just one example of imaging on a smartphone. But you've alluded to, Michio, the fact that all these metrics of man, like blood pressure and glucose and oxygen concentration in the blood, and a long, long list, can be all captured through a smartphone, whether it be with a watch or a Band-Aid or some other ad to the phone. And so basically using the power of this remarkable microprocessor in the phone to get wireless connectivity with your body.
Amazing. So let's break it down. The population is aging. And as the population ages, we have problems with diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, you name it. So let's break it down. First of all, diabetes. You're saying now that your smartphone can have an attachment that would allow you to measure your blood glucose for those people who are concerned about diabetes. How does that work?
Well, you just have a tiny sensor that you can put on your abdomen or your arm, and it has a hair-thin sensor that goes under the skin. You barely feel it being applied. And then every 5 minutes, your glucose shows up right on your phone or on your watch. And so, in effect, this is a way to get glucose sensing all the time. You have to change that sensor every week or 10 days. But soon, over time, these sensors are going to get much less expensive. They're highly accurate, but they'll last longer, so let's say even 2 weeks. and it's a great way to be able to get continuous readout. So when you're eating, you'll know the certain things and other activities that modulate your glucose, and you can have so much better control if you're even a pre-diabetic to avoid ever getting the disease.
Now, a friend of mine is a doctor, and he had an Apple iPhone, and he recently bought an attachment that was a portable EKG machine that has actually showed you what's happening with your heart. It wasn't the best, of course. You need a lot of sensors on the body. But the very fact that you could even do a crude estimate of what's happening with your heart right in your living room, that's pretty remarkable, right?
Oh, yeah. No, you can get several leads of the cardiogram anywhere. I mean, I've done it on a plane with passengers that had a query heart attack. I mean, the fact is that just you can make a loop with your heart with just two fingers, and you can get, so much information about the heart rhythm. And people can get that instantly. You can order this for, something like $69 and have it to their phone. People who have a heart rhythm problem or a possible issue can get the answer without ever having to go to an emergency room or a doctor's office.
I want to talk with you about evolution. It's actually a board game. Yes, a new board game that you can play with your family called Evolution, the Beginning. A few months ago, I played for the first time. I must say, it's a clever game. And because it's new, I wanted to make sure that dear old Dad could play this game with the kids at Christmas. So here's the goal of Evolution the Beginning. Eat as much food as possible to survive. Yep, and to eat the food, each player takes turns creating and evolving their very own species. There are hundreds of ways to evolve your species, and the fun part is, it's up to you to determine how to do it. Evolution the Beginning is based on science. Your species must adapt and change in order to be competitive, just like in real life. Evolution the Beginning is only at Target. You'll find it in the game section. Just look for the big dinosaur on the box. It's science without feeling like science, and that's the fun. So get it at Target today. That's Evolution the Beginning. Let's take a short commercial break. Once again, you are listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. The book is called The Patient Will See You Now. The Future of Medicine is in Your Hands by Dr. Eric Topol. He's a professor at the Scripps Institute in La Jolla, California, and he's a practicing cardiologist and professor of genomics. So once again, stay tuned as we continue the discussion about your health. And you can always give us a call at 866-323-2129 and have your thoughts heard on over 100 radio stations that carry Science Fantastic. So give us a call. The hotline number is 866-323-2129 and have your thoughts heard on national radio. So stay tuned as we continue a discussion of The Patient Will See You Now.
You have been exposed to a lethal dose of radiation. You will experience catastrophic organ failure. In 5 days' time, you will die. Please sign this to receive medication. My oral, extremely potent, will keep you functioning normally until your death.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. In this hour, we're talking about your future, the future of medicine. We have with us Dr. Eric Topol. The book is called The Patient Will See You Now. The future of medicine is in your hands. And we should also point out that he was also the author of a previous bestseller, The Creative Destruction of Medicine. And he's a pioneer in something that used to be considered a contradiction in terms, digital medicine. He's a professor of genomics at the Scripps Research Institute in La Jolla, California. And in 2012, he was voted the #1 most influential physician executive in the United States. Well, Eric, when I was a young kid, there was a program called Science Fiction Theater. And after all these years, I still remember one episode. There was a policeman who had a heart problem. They hooked him up with a portable tape recorder with artificial intelligence so that it would analyze his heartbeat and analyze it and tell the doctors whether or not he had a heart attack. It would radio it back to the headquarters of the scientists monitoring his health, automatically call for a doctor and locate his position. Now, at that point, I said to myself, come on, give me a break. No way. But the question is, how close are we to a device which will automatically sense the fact you're having a heart attack, even if it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and, analyze it to make sure that it's not a false positive, and call for an ambulance if you're unconscious?
Well, we're going to get there. I mean, we're working on that. Other groups are around the world, Michio. The point being is you have to have ability to track inside the bloodstream. So it wouldn't be a sensor you would just wear like a Band-Aid. And, of course, that takes years to get through the usual FDA path. However, you can detect a heart attack before it happens, once it happens, it's like a fire drill and there's damage to the heart muscle from lack of oxygen. But if you can pick it up hours, days, even a couple of weeks before the artery cracks and the blood clot forms, then you can preempt the heart attack. And so you wouldn't have to get the ambulance and the doctor. You would just basically alert the patient saying, you know what, you need to get on very potent blood thinners because you're at risk of imminently developing a heart attack. And that's where this is headed, is someday the number of heart attacks that we'll be seeing because of sensors and artificial intelligence through smartphone processed data will be markedly reduced. The key is having the people that you know are at risk to have the sensors embedded.
Okay, well, somebody is going to make $1 million creating a device as baby boomers start to age, as they start to have heart attacks, that will alert you that you are having a heart attack rather than having just acid indigestion and heartburn.
Right. Well, of course, that doesn't preempt the need for healthy lifestyles and all the things you want to do to try to prevent heart disease in the first place. Mm-hmm. But this is that extra layer of protection that you're outlining, I think, is eventually going to come into play. And I think it'll be great, but it's going to take a while.
Okay. Well, now let's talk about the big one, and that is the #2 killer in the United States, and that is cancer. And recently, there's been quite a bit of flurry of activity concerning something called liquid biopsy. Wouldn't it be great, instead of having to go to the doctor and get a piece of the tissue and checking out whether it's cancerous or not, to have a simple blood test? A blood test to look at traces of cancer proteins circulating inside your blood, and bingo, you know that you have not a tumor, but a cancer colony growing in your body. How far are we away from liquid biopsies that can determine if you have cancer way before a tumor forms?
Well, we're already there. That's what's so extraordinary. This is one of the most exciting parts of medicine today, and that is we backed into this, Michio, because there's been over 1 million women who've had, during pregnancy, who've had a test of a single blood tube for fetal sequencing, this so-called non-invasive prenatal test. And out of those women, when they were getting their fetus examined to see whether there was any chromosomal abnormalities, now well over 100, so it's rare, but these are healthy young women, they got called saying, we found cancer in the sample. And so we already know that you can detect cancer, and then those women with the abnormality, the tumor DNA sitting in their plasma from the one tube of blood, that can get sequenced. And the person also has to, again, get an evaluation, and almost invariably, close to 100% of these people, women had cancer, whether it's colon or breast or lymphoma, whatever it was. That has set the whole stage now for being able to, as you just outlined, pick up cancer at the earliest possible time, which is going to be feasible. The real question is, can we change the natural history? Because just because you pick it up early is that going to change, the fate of the tumor? So it's an exciting time, something I think that is really coming alive right now. There's over 40 companies that are now in the liquid biopsy for cancer field. And they're all vying to not only to monitor cancer better, to also monitor people who've had prior cancer but under surveillance. But then the big one, which you've touched on, is in healthy people before they've ever been diagnosed.
Okay, Eric, we have to take a short commercial break, but after the break, we're going to continue a discussion about your health in the future. As baby boomers age, we're going to see an epidemic, some people say, of old people's diseases. And what are we going to do about it? Well, the digital revolution is changing the doctor's office and your living room as well. With us today, once again, is the author of the book, The Patient Will See You Now. The Future of Medicine is in Your Hands by Dr. Eric Topol, cardiologist, professor of genomics at the Scripps Institute in La Jolla, California. And once again, the book is called The Patient Will See You Now. So stay tuned as we continue a discussion about your future.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
Hello, my name is Roy Masters. I'm an English veteran who's been witness to history and proud to become an American citizen. Because in America, free thought was encouraged and being truthful mattered more than being nice. My America was truly politically incorrect in all the best ways, which is why we were blessed. But things have changed, and Americans don't think American anymore. Even though I still speak with an English accent, my heart thinks American, my voice speaks American, and that is freedom. Please join me on my daily radio show Advice Line, Monday through Friday, and I will help you to reclaim our country. Let me help you find the courage to think and speak American again. Please download my radio show app, available now at the Apple App Store and Android Google Play. Thank you.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
I'm Jim LeBlanc with Volunteers of America. When it comes to advertising, you gotta call Dan.
I'm Mark Jones with SunPro Solar. If you're not getting a significant return on your advertising investment, you gotta call Dan.
I'm Blair Cottingham with United Rentals. If you're not happy with the results of your advertising, you gotta call Dan.
Generally, we work with two types of clients. Those who advertise and are worried about their return on investment, or those who are frustrated about not getting a better return on investment. You probably don't fall into either of these categories, but if you do, call me. I'm Dan Glaviano.
If you spend $10,000 to $80,000 a month on advertising, Dan will show you how to make your advertising a profit center, not an expense. Dan only works with one business in any given category. Find out if your category is still available. Visit gottacalldan.com. gottacalldan.com. That's gottacalldan.com.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
You're listening to Science Fantastic.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. In this hour, we're talking about your health, things that are going to impact on your life. We're talking about the future of medicine with Dr. Eric Topol. The book is called The Patient will see you now. The future of medicine is in your hands. Author of the bestseller Creative Destruction of Medicine, and today we're talking about his latest book, The Patient Will See You Now. Well, Eric, let's talk about what else you can do with your cell phone. You can use your cell phone to test for your breath, saliva for flu virus, strep throat, heart failure, drugs, and also as a microscope. So lead us through some of the attachments and apps you can modify your smartphone with so that you can do all these things that normally are done at a doctor's laboratory.
Right. Well, it is amazing, and this is a whole revolution in lab medicine. And so whether it's an infection, most infections now can be diagnosed. An example, in Rwanda, syphilis and HIV were diagnosed with 99% accuracy with a 50-cent attachment in minutes. And if you can do that in Rwanda, you can do that in virtually almost any infectious disease. The Zika virus, not yet, but Ebola, TB, so many others now can be diagnosed, malaria through a smartphone. The microscope feature that you've mentioned, the labs, most routine labs, although they're not yet available to consumers, but they will be imminently. So the need to go to a hospital or a doctor's lab will be markedly reduced in the future.
Okay, and also your breath or saliva can be analyzed for the flu virus, strep throat, heart failure. Is that right?
Or maybe even cancer. I mean, the point being is in the breath is rich, and we already have now been able to see simulation of the nose of a dog, which of course can smell cancer when trained, and we can basically replicate that through sensors for processing breath. So all sorts of things that we never envisioned, as you said, saliva, sweat, the rich being able to understand the constituents in these different body fluids or breath. So this is really exciting. That's going to take longer for this to come into play, but we're headed there.
Now, I understand that doctors have already created a mirror such that you blow on it, analyzes the water droplets, and tell you if you have lung cancer. And you can also modify that for cell phones. Even your cell phone will tell you if you have lung cancer or not by looking for a mutated P53 gene. Amazing, absolutely amazing. And once again, this is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku.
Stay away.
If you don't cooperate, I can't treat you.
When we agreed to be examined by this ship's medical officer, we didn't know that you were a primitive computer matrix.
I assure you there is nothing primitive about me. I am programmed to perform more than 5 million medical procedures.
Does that include bloodletting?
No, but I'll be happy to add it to my repertoire.
You're listening to Science Fantastic. Listening to Science Fantastic.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. In this hour, we're talking to Dr. Eric Topol about his latest book, The Patient Will See You Now. The future of medicine is in your hands. You know, we're not getting younger as time goes by. In fact, baby boomers are hitting retirement age and beyond. And we're going to see, some people say, an epidemic in diseases. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. We're talking about cancer, heart disease. And is the medical establishment ready to handle this extra load? Well, Eric, we talked about how your cell phone can become essentially a mini laboratory. You don't necessarily have to go to the doctor's office for many of these diagnoses. But now let's go even further into the future, 10, 20 years into the future, when artificial intelligence starts to invade our living room. IBM, for example, is pioneering something called RoboDoc. That is, you talk to your intelligent wallpaper, an image of a doctor appears who speaks reasonably good English, not perfect, and you talk to it about your symptoms. It scans the entire medical literature and gives you sound medical advice. This won't replace a doctor, of course. You still have to have doctors for surgery, doctors to evaluate all these conflicting pieces of information. But what are your thoughts about whether it's possible that artificial intelligence will also change the way we view the digital revolution?
Because we still have over 12 million serious medical errors a year, and that figure hasn't budged. These are life-threatening, major errors. So we need to have state-of-the-art care for everyone, and having a connection to a supercomputer for all that information is a good step. It doesn't mean we're going to preempt the role of doctors. We're going to morph it. We're going to say, you know what, this is the person is getting this information. This is not like doing a Google search, right? This is, as you said, it's taking that individual's data and processing it against with all the world's knowledge. And of course, it'll be sensor and lab data and sequence data and the entire medical literature. So that gives a very new way of being more accurate in real time as to what's going on. And then, of course, doctors are in the background to get guidance and treatment, advice, wisdom, and all that kind of stuff.
Right. And some doctors I talk to are a little bit nervous about RoboDoc. However, some people say that it will be basically yet another tool. It's not going to replace a doctor. It's just another tool in the arsenal that doctors have, because ultimately doctors have to make the final decision. They have to perform surgery. They're the ones who have to evaluate all this massive conflicting pieces of data, right? So it's not going to replace a doctor, but it's another tool in their toolkit.
It's a very powerful one, too. It isn't exactly getting a warm reception from doctors because for more than 2 millennia, we have exercised total control and authority. But the fact that information now is so eminently portable and with deep learning, machine learning for each person, no less at a large population level, this is such a powerful, datafied new medicine that we're heading toward. And so that's why we as physicians need to embrace it rather than repudiate this progress.
Now let's talk about science fiction. In science fiction, of course, we have the tricorder from Star Trek, where you simply wave this cell phone-looking device at a patient, and whoops, there's all the biometric information you could possibly conceive of. Now, of course, we don't have it yet, but some people say that the MRI machine is getting smaller and smaller. The world's record for a miniaturized MRI machine is the size of a briefcase, and we now have supercomputers that can compensate for weak magnetic fields, which is the main ingredient of an MRI machine, and allow us to create MRI machines fully functional, giving us glorious three-dimensional pictures with a device the size of a briefcase. And the people in Germany that built it claim that a cell phone is perhaps the ultimate size of an MRI machine. So your thoughts, do you think that in the future we will have a tricorder? Not anytime soon, of course, but in the coming decades, perhaps Star Trek may not have been too far off. What are your thoughts?
No, I think Star Trek was right on, and I think you've outlined where it can go with MRI imaging. But, as I mentioned, it can do a total body ultrasound today at exquisite resolution. And then all these things that we've been talking about will make the tricorder look weak from Star Trek. I mean, it's because, first of all, it'd be much smaller than that device, but also it'd be so much more comprehensive. So the medical tricorder is essentially a reality. The question is, in the future, how quickly, how extensive, that coverage. And also, one of the biggest issues is, are we going to take advantage of cheap chips? We can't have any more of this really big-ticket items in medicine. We need cheap stuff. And so that's going to be an interesting part of this as well.
And also, we didn't even talk about DNA sequencing. It's getting cheaper, it's getting more reliable, and we now have databases, computer databases of DNA. And cancer, we're even having a cancer genome project whereby we can sequence all the cancers that are out there, thousands of different kinds of cancers. So you think, therefore, that in the future it'll be even easier to do DNA of diseases, DNA of people?
Yeah, I think that's all part of the story here. It's this, panoramic view, high-definition human beings, and it includes the sequence of DNA, but also includes, the microbiome and, all these other layers of biologic information with the physiology of sensors and the anatomy of scans like ultrasound and, as you mentioned, MRI. So we have a capability that is so extraordinary to define each human being, the digital man. And this is something that is going to have the most radical change of medicine going forward, particularly since it's not just doctors doing it, it's people doing it for themselves.
And some people have claimed that when everybody has a DNA scan, not just of their body, but every tissue in their body, it means we can use computers to scan it to find out where aging takes place, and thereby, but statistically, analyze the aging process itself. 15 seconds. You think, therefore, that we may get a handle on aging once everyone is sequenced?
Yeah, there's a big bet on that right now. Several companies are getting into it. I don't know. It's a great question. I guess only time will tell.
Okay. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being on Science Fantastic.
Oh, I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Michio.
And once again, our special guest today was Dr. Eric Topol, author of The Creative Destruction of Medicine, and his latest book is called The Patient Will See You Now. The future of medicine is in your hands.
The most up-to-date announcements and analysis from today's technological leaders every week on Science Fantastic. Black holes, the cosmos, space, and time travel, medicine, robotics, science, and technology. Professor Michio Kaku, theoretical physicist, graduated from Harvard University summa cum laude and first in his physics class. Received his PhD in physics from the University of California at Berkeley. And now, a professor of physics at City University of New York for 30 years. His goal? To complete Einstein's dream of a theory of everything, to derive an equation, to summarize all the physical laws of the universe. The co-founder of string field theory, author of the international bestsellers Hyperspace, Visions, and Parallel Worlds, and voted as one of the 100 smartest people in New York, profiling the latest cutting-edge developments in science, which revolutionize our world and touch our lives. Now, Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku.
This is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. On Science Fantastic, we profile the amazing, jaw-dropping scientific discoveries which are revolutionizing our world and touching our lives. And in this hour, we're going to talk about the deepest secrets of the entire universe. We're going to talk about gravity waves. We're going to talk about black holes. We're going to talk about big bangs and parallel universes, the cutting edge of modern physics. With us today is Dr. Jana Levin, author of a new book. It's called Black Hole Blues and Other Songs from Outer Space. She's a professor of physics and astronomy at Barnard College at Columbia University. Her previous books include How the Universe Got Its Spots and A Madman Dreams of Turing Machines. Now, gravity waves were discovered a few months ago, and it created a sensation in the media. People were saying that after 100 years after the prediction of 1916, the work of Albert Einstein, the last missing piece of relativity, has finally come into play with experiment. Scientists have detected colliding black holes in outer space, which themselves were predicted by Einstein, and we've detected the radiation from them with gravity wave detectors. Some people call this as an analogy like throwing a pebble in a pond. When you throw a pebble in a pond, ripples form, so the surface of the pond is not empty at all. The surface of the pond is dynamic, and it can sustain ripples. Well, that surface of the pond is space itself. The rock heating the surface of the pond is colliding black holes, the radiation emitted from colliding black holes, the most cosmic disruption of space and time since the Big Bang itself. And we've now measured it. A prediction made in 1916 was finally found in 2016. And with us today to discuss this is Dr. Jana Levin of Columbia University. And we should also mention that first we'll detect colliding black holes in outer space, but then we'll detect the Big Bang itself. Imagine baby pictures of the instant of creation, and maybe we'll detect an umbilical cord connecting our infant universe with a parent universe. Okay, well, let's take a short commercial break. And after the break, we're going to bring our special guest talking about black hole blues, the discovery of gravity waves, and the work of Albert Einstein, the Big Bang, and the creation of the universe itself on Science Fantastic. Give us a call as well. 866-323-2129 is the number to call if you want to get on Science Fantastic. 866-323-2129.
You're listening to Science Fantastic. For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
Hello, here I am, Roy Masters, 55 years on talk radio and still saving lives. Please continue helping the Foundation of Human Understanding by simply donating $19.95 per month. Paying it forward plan will continue saving lives into the years to come. I'm a pioneer in helping our troops to overcome the ravages of PTSD without drugs. Go to FHU.com and then click on the donation page. That's FHU.com.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
As a business owner, or CEO for that matter, are you frustrated with the money you're wasting on advertising? How do I know it's being wasted? Because you see your advertising as an expense. I started my company because I was tired of seeing passionate business owners waste advertising dollars. So what if I could show you how to make your advertising a profit center in 30 days, guaranteed? I know what you're thinking. That's bull. Then challenge me. At no cost to you, I'll show you how to make your advertising a profit center, not an expense. If this is important to you, call me. I'm Dan Glaviano.
If you spend $10,000 to $80,000 a month on advertising, Dan will show you how to make your advertising a profit center, not an expense. Dan only works with one business in any given category. Find out if your category is still available. Visit gottacalldan.com. gottacalldan.com. That's gottacalldan.com.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
Are you a baby boomer? Afraid of stocks and commodity prices? Want to invest but don't know what to do? Discover the alternative asset class Barron's Magazine describes as both lucrative and safe. Discover high yields without market volatility. Request your investor's guide. Call Cornerstone at 800-222-INFO. 800-222-INFO. That's 800-222-INFO.
Here's Professor Michio Kaku.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. In this hour, we're going to talk about some of the deepest secrets of the universe, the deepest secrets of space-time as revealed by gravity waves, which were discovered just a few months ago, generating worldwide headlines. And most people's reaction was, huh? I mean, what is that? What the hell is a gravity wave? And why is it generating so much excitement in the scientific literature, hitting the headlines around the world just a few months ago? Well, with us today to talk about gravity waves is Jana Levin. She's a professor of physics and astronomy at Barnard College at Columbia. And she's also the Director of Sciences at Pioneer Works, which is a Center for Arts and Sciences in Brooklyn. And she's also the author of a previous book, How the Universe Got Its Spots, and believe it or not, she is a novelist. How many theoretical physicists do you know are novelists? The book is called A Madman Dreams of Turing Machines. And today we're going to talk about her latest book, Black Hole Blues, and other songs from outer space. So, Dr. Levin, glad you could be on Science Fantastic.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, well, the first question that we always ask our guests is, how did you as a youth get interested in science when we have so many distractions as a youth?
You know, I don't think I was a kid who thought I was interested in science. I remember the first time that I was in a dark enough place, having grown up in the city, on a summer trip to look up at the sky and really see the Milky Way and being incredibly affected by it. And I loved talking about the stars and thinking, but I actually didn't recognize it as being scientifically disposed. I don't think I acknowledged that I had a scientific leaning until college. So when I started college, I wanted to study philosophy and art. And it was kind of a revelation that my real interest was in mathematics and in physics.
And what was that? I mean, what steered you in that direction of going into mathematical physics?
You know, I was listening to a lot of philosophers argue about what Kant might have meant hundreds of years ago, and it was driving me crazy. And I just thought there's something wrong with the fact that we're still trying to decipher what somebody was trying to tell us. And I went to a lecture about Einstein and quantum mechanics and relativity, and it might be hard to understand for sure, but once Einstein taught us E equals mc squared, it belonged to everybody. It was something we all had forever. It was not something that 100 years later we're still arguing, what did he mean? And I just thought there's something about that transcends everything, and it just seems so powerful. And I just became very interested in it as a tool to understand the world.
Yeah, in fact, when I was a freshman in college, I went to Harvard. I took a course in philosophy, and what was so frustrating was nothing is decidable in philosophy. You can have your opinion, and somebody else has another opinion, but so what? And you can write as many PhD theses as you want concerning what did he really mean anyway.
Yeah,
well,
and, you know, math is the same for us on the other side of the galaxy. There's something about that that's really beautiful, and it's the same for somebody on the other side of the globe.
Yeah, I find that thought very reassuring, that if I write down an equation, that someone on the other end of the galaxy may be writing down that very same equation in different notation, and these are universal concepts. I mean, the question of universality and immutability is quite different from the world of English literary criticism and philosophy, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think that it's unifying. If we all stopped and acknowledged that people speaking different languages in different eras with different cultures all have this one sort of intellectual theme in common that they can share. That's true for all of us. I think there's something that's very promising about that.
And also, don't you realize that as we get into decidable questions in physics, that physics gets simpler every year, that English literary criticism gets more complicated as we debate what did Hemingway really mean by that sentence, while in physics we can summarize everything in terms of just a handful of equations, like Einstein's equations, the quantum theory. A handful of equations can summarize everything known about science. Isn't that incredible?
It is incredible. I mean, I think as a writer I can get very interested in writing styles and different evolutions in writing, but as a physicist, it's the last place with a straight face that we can talk about beauty as being a valid interpretive tool, and that we can actually discover things by imposing symmetry and beauty and elegance as a rule. We can make actual physical discoveries that way. It's quite spectacular, really.
Yeah, it's hard to convey that feeling. When I was in high school years and years ago, I cried. I cried when I first saw what is called the Dirac equation. After struggling for many months with an earlier equation called the Schrodinger equation, then seeing the Dirac equation, I just broke down and cried. I didn't realize that nature could be so simple, beautiful, and elegant. Well, so much for propaganda.
Okay.
Let's get into the substance of your book.
All of us.
Right. The book is called Black Hole Blues and Other Songs from Outer Space. So let's talk about your book. First of all, it was in 1916 that Albert Einstein talked about predicting gravity waves, but he didn't think that in his lifetime there would be instruments capable of detecting gravity waves. So first of all, tell us, what did Einstein do in 1916?
Well, so as soon as he finally mathematized his general theory, his theory that gravity was really a theory of curved space-time, the first thing he thought was most important was to turn to gravitational waves. So the idea is simple. If something like the Earth curves space and time around it, then if the Earth moves, those curves have to move and adjust to follow the Earth. There would be ripples, he realized, variations in the shape of space and time itself, waves in the shape of space and time, so that if a gravitational wave were to pass us, we would be squeezed and stretched slightly. We would sort of bob on the wave like something floating on the ocean. And to generate the gravitational waves, you really need a tremendous amount of mass and energy concentrated and moving and dynamic. And he just, first of all, didn't believe there would ever be anything massive enough or cataclysmic enough to generate gravitational waves, these ripples in space-time, in any significant way. And also, he kept changing his mind about whether they were even real. So, in 1916, he said they were real, then later he said they weren't. By the 1930s, he was still changing his mind.
I see.
It's a hard problem.
Now, here's a question that even children ask, and that is, if the sun were to disappear right now, the sun were to disappear, how long would it take for the Earth to feel it? Now, if you are Isaac Newton, nowhere in your equations is there a concept of time and velocity of gravity, so the Earth would instantly be spun out of orbit. But if you're Albert Einstein, how would you answer the question, if the Earth were to disappear, the sun were to disappear right now, what would happen to the Earth?
So Einstein, adhering to the limit of light speed, using that incredibly severe constraint to understand physics or to make his revelations, he would say that, first of all, the light from the sun would continue to come to us for 8 minutes. It's about 8 minutes before we realized it had gone dark, and then that would be catastrophic. And at the same time, waves in the shape of space-time would travel to us. It would take 8 minutes for them to get to us to communicate the fact that the sun was gone. So we would no longer be on this curved orbit, this circle around the sun. Suddenly, we would just kind of fly off in a straight direction. But it would take 8 minutes before it happened.
So even kids know that you can't go faster than the speed of light. Every fan of Star Trek knows that. And however, if the sun were to disappear right now, what you're saying is that even gravity cannot go faster than the speed of light. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. These waves in the shape of space-time would propagate towards us, telling us that the space was smoothing out, that the circular curve we're falling along around the sun would be gone. But this wave would have to take a light travel time, even though it's not light. And it's really important to emphasize that these waves in the curves of space-time are not a form of light. They're pure gravitational. They would travel at the same speed as light. And so it would take the same time for us to find out the sun had gone dark and that we were suddenly traveling in a straight line.
Okay. And also, even though a direct measurement of gravity waves would be extremely difficult, as Einstein himself realized in 1916, there was a Nobel Prize given to two physicists over a decade ago, looking at two pulsars that were chasing each other like a dog chases its tail, going in a death spiral. And if there really were gravity waves, it would seep energy into outer space, and so they would be in a death spiral. So explain that. Explain how is it that an indirect measurement of gravity waves could be done, even though a direct measurement, as you point out in your book, would be much more difficult.
Yeah, so this was in the 70s that the work was done, and it was in the 90s, I believe, when the Nobel Prize was awarded to Hulse and Taylor for their discovery of a new kind of pulsar. So what they looked at was a neutron star, which is a dead star that's not quite massive enough to become a black hole. It just becomes an incredibly dense, basically nuclear particle. a neutron, like a big giant neutron, and it's in their case it was spinning and emitting light like a lighthouse. It was a pulsar, which is just a kind of a lighthouse effect when these neutron stars spin. And they saw it orbiting a companion. And what they deduced, this is actually not Halston Taylor. It's interesting. I heard from Joseph Taylor, the Nobel Prize winner recently, who said that after the work they did for the discovery of the new kind of pulsar, which is the work for which they were awarded the Nobel Prize, they later looked more closely at the orbit and realized that neutron star was slowly spiraling into its companion. And the reason it was spiraling in is because it was losing energy to the creation of gravitational waves. I liken these to like mallets on a drum, where the drum is space-time itself. And these mallets are moving, and the slower they move, the weaker the waves they create in the drum. But they create waves nonetheless, and they lose energy and spiral in. Now, that pulsar will take 300 million years to spiral together. So we're not going to build a machine to look for the gravitational waves from that directly. They're too weak right now. But what they could do is by calculating the in-spiral time and matching it to the calculation, theoretically, of the energy loss to the gravitational waves, they could match that and realize it was a perfect match, and so indirectly deduce that gravitational waves were being created.
I've heard an analogy being made with molasses that if you store a spoon in molasses, you create, well, a wave that carries energy off, and as the waves move, you lose energy, and therefore with two pulsars, you're in a death spiral. Well, let's move on to your book. Let's now talk about direct measurements of gravity waves, not indirect measurements. Let's talk about LIGO. What is LIGO, and explain how big these two machines are.
So LIGO was an idea that started just as kind of a thought experiment, really. Ray Weiss talks about this when he first started thinking about LIGO 5 decades ago. He was just trying to understand Einstein's prediction for gravitational waves. And he was having so much trouble. He said it was so hard to comprehend that all he could imagine was, how would I measure this? And he imagined that he could hang mirrors so that they were free to float in space-time. And if a gravitational wave passed, those mirrors would kind of bob on the wave like something floating in the ocean. And if he could keep track of the location of the mirrors, he could measure the ringing drum, record the ringing drum of space-time, and maybe even play it back as sound. Plug this recording, kind of like how an electric guitar works, where you pluck the string, it doesn't make a sound until the body of the electric guitar translates it through an amplifier. And it started as just what he called a haiku. And he built a tiny machine, a meter and a half long, to try to see if this was even something that could be done in the lab. The real machines, 50 years later, are 4 kilometers long. They're each shaped like an L, where mirrors are suspended at the ends of the L. And there's 2 of them, one in Louisiana and one in Washington State. And 50 years on, it's integrated to about $1 billion, and now is a team of about 1,000.
Okay, so it's a gigantic machine where we have 2 laser beams, like you pointed out, in the shape of an L. And I guess where the 2 laser beams meet, that's where you can pick up what are called interference patterns, right? The ripples of interacting black holes in space. So what did LIGO find? I understand they found evidence of colliding black holes in outer space. Could you elaborate?
So I could just say that you'd only really need one arm. You wouldn't need the whole L. If we had very precise clocks, you could just keep track of the light travel time down one arm, and if the light took a little longer or a little shorter time, you would know if a gravitational wave had squeezed or stretched space along that arm. But there aren't precise enough clocks. So they build an L, they take the laser, they split it down the 2 arms of the L, and when the light comes back, if it interferes perfectly, then the light traveled the same distance along the 2 arms. If it interferes imperfectly, you can measure by how much the arms were squeezed and stretched. So it's really an ingenious way to get around the fact that we don't have precise enough clocks. So what happened in the actual detection that was made was 1.3 billion years ago, plus or minus a couple 100 million years, two black holes collided. Each one was about 30 times the mass of the sun. And instead of the pulsars that we talked about earlier, these two black holes were in the final throes of what was probably a very long life.
Dr. Levin, we have to take a short commercial break. But after the break, we're going to enter the world of black holes and what happens when black holes collide, releasing a burst of radiation which we can now detect on the planet Earth with gravity wave detectors. And so let's take a short commercial break. And after the break, we're going to talk about colliding black holes. The book is called Black Hole Blues and Other Songs from Outer Space. Once again, our special guest is Dr. Jana Levin. You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. And after the break, we're going to talk about colliding black holes in outer space.
You're listening to Science Fantastic.
In this hour, we're talking about some of the deepest mysteries of space and time. It was 100 years ago that an obscure physicist called Albert Einstein made a prediction concerning the nature of space and time itself and the fact there should be ripples, like ripples on a pond. Think of throwing a stone in a pond and the ripples emerge from the center. These ripples would be ripples of gravity waves, which in principle could open up a new realm of telescopes. Instead of relying upon light, instead of relying on radio, why not rely on gravity waves? But with us today to talk about these things is Dr. Jana Levin. She's a professor of physics and astronomy at Barnard College, and she's the author of previous books, including How the Universe Got Its Spots, as well as a novel. How many professors of physics do you know that are novelists? The novel is called A Madman Dreams of Turing Machines, and today we're talking about her latest book, Black Hole Blues and Other Songs from Outer Space. Well, where we last left off, we were talking about colliding black holes in outer space. First of all, give us a short explanation of what a black hole is and what happens if they collide.
So black holes were first proposed just as a kind of mathematical oddity. And Einstein knew very early on about the idea of black holes, although they weren't called that then. Karl Schwarzschild was a German infantry soldier who was calculating ballistic trajectories in the trenches on the Russian front in 1916 when he was reading Einstein's paper. And he came up with the solution where he just imagined, what if I took the mass of the sun and I concentrated all of it to a point? What would the curved space-time look like around that object? And he realized at some point space and time would be so strongly curved that to launch off this object, you would need to travel faster than the speed of light. And that wouldn't be possible. So the object would go dark because not even light could escape. And he sent this to Einstein. Einstein was very impressed with this mathematical model, and he helped it get published, but he didn't believe nature could possibly think of a way to form such a thing. If you imagine trying to crush a cup, it's very hard to do, to make it very small. I can't mechanically crush a cup and turn it into a black hole. It's actually incredibly hard to do. And so for decades, people didn't think that these would actually form in nature. It was many years before people realized, actually, if a star is heavy enough that when it runs out of nuclear fuel, it will no longer be able to resist complete gravitational collapse. And it will collapse under its own weight, forming a shadow around it, which is the event horizon, the region beyond which not even light can escape. And then it will continue to fall, the material that makes the star. And we don't know what happens to it in the center. But if you were to cross that horizon, that shadow of a black hole that formed from the death state of a star, there would be nothing there. There would be nothing there as you fell across. So black holes are really pure space-time curves.
Now, I understand that J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, was the man with his student who came up with the idea of collapsing a star symmetrically, an implosion method, and he actually used that apparently for the atomic bomb. When he was designing the Hiroshima and the Nagasaki bomb, he realized the Nagasaki bomb could go through critical mass if you implode it. Except instead of using gravity, you would use, of course, chemical explosives to contract the plutonium. But apparently it was his work on the black hole that led to the Nagasaki bomb.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because that's not often known that in some ways that's Oppenheimer's most important contribution to physics was his work on understanding that the nuclear processes in the center of a star were very similar to the nuclear processes in a bomb, and that they were not strong enough, those nuclear forces, to resist gravitational collapse, and that black holes would in fact form as astrophysical objects. It was kind of whimsical for him to work on that, but it was his most important contribution, and many people denied that it was right. This was in the 30s that he did that, but it wasn't until the 60s that people started to accept the work, and the name black hole was coined.
Okay, now let's talk about what happens when two black holes collide. What happens? Do they fly? Oh, we have to take a short commercial break. But after the break, let's talk about the collisions of massive black holes in outer space. Once again, our special guest today is Dr. Jana Levin. The book is called Black Hole Blues and Other Songs from Outer Space. And once again, you are listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. So stay tuned as we continue with discussion of gravity waves and black holes.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
I'm Jim LeBlanc with Volunteers of America. When it comes to advertising, you gotta call Dan.
I'm Mark Jones with SunPro Solar. If you're not getting a significant return on your advertising investment, you gotta call Dan.
I'm Blair Cottingham with United Rentals. If you're not happy with the results of your advertising, you gotta call Dan.
Generally, we work with two types of clients. Those who advertise and are worried about their return on investment, or those who are frustrated about not getting a better return on investment. You probably don't fall into either of these categories, but if you do, call me. I'm Dan Glaviano.
If you spend $10,000 to $80,000 a month on advertising, Dan will show you how to make your advertising a profit center, not an expense. Dan only works with one business in any given category. Find out if your category is still available. Visit gottacalldan.com. gottacalldan.com. That's gottacalldan.com.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
Hello, my name is Roy Masters. I'm an English veteran who's been witness to history and proud to become an American citizen. Because in America, free thought was encouraged and being truthful mattered more than being nice. My America was truly politically incorrect in all the best ways, which is why we were blessed. But things have changed, and Americans don't think American anymore. Even though I still speak with an English accent, my heart thinks American. My voice speaks American, and that is freedom. Please join me on my daily radio show Advice Line, Monday through Friday, and I will help you to reclaim our country. Let me help you find the courage to think and speak American again. Please download my radio show app, available now at the Apple App Store and Android Google Play. Thank you.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
This is Science Fantastic.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. In this hour, we're talking about some of the deepest secrets in the universe. We're talking about black holes, we're talking about gravity wave detectors, and we're talking about a book called Black Hole Blues and Other Songs from Outer Space by Professor of Physics and Astronomy at Barnard College, Dr. Jana Levin. And also, if you go to my website, check out my Facebook site. We're up to, well, very close to 3 million. We're almost up to 3 million fans on Facebook. On Twitter, we're up to, let's see, over 300,000 people follow me on Twitter. Where we last left off, we were talking about black holes in outer space, which back when I was a grad student years ago, we were told that black holes are basically like unicorns, science fiction, fantasy, and we see them in outer space, and also we can now detect their collision. So tell us a little bit now about what happens when two black holes collide and how we were able to detect that with LIGO.
So black holes are, by definition, dark. They emit no light, they reflect no light, and the only reason we've ever postulated that black holes exist in the universe is because we see them tearing debris down around them. So indirectly, we're really looking at the effect that black holes have on other stars or other objects, other material. And in this case, it was the first time we were able to detect bare black holes with no debris around them as far as we can tell. And you could not see this with a telescope. So the two black holes are in their final orbits together. They're ringing space-time like mallets on a drum. They're emitting tremendous amounts of energy when they do so, and they're spiraling together, but it happens in complete darkness. And in the final fifth of a second, we recorded the gravitational waves emitted as the black holes collided and wobbled down to one final black hole that was about 60 times the mass of the sun, and then went quiet.
So in other words, we're witnessing some of the most violent events in the history of the universe.
Yes, it was the most energetic event we've ever detected next to the Big Bang itself. The power that came out in darkness in the gravitational waves exceeds all the power coming out in all the stars combined in our observable universe.
So now I want to talk to you about Evolution, the Beginning. It's actually a board game. Yes, a new board game that you can play with your family, and it's called Evolution, the Beginning. A few months ago, the inventors of this game came by to visit. They showed me how to play, and I told them very clearly, I want to make sure that dear old Dad can play this game with his kids when they open it on Christmas morning. So we talked about the goal of Evolution, the Beginning. It's actually quite simple. Eat as much food as possible, because food counts for points in this game. To eat the food, each player takes turns creating and evolving their own species. You can create long-necked herbivores that eat plants, or create speedy carnivores that eat other organisms. There are hundreds of traits. It's up to you to decide what to create, and that's the fun. What I love is that Evolution, the Beginning is a game based on science. It actually teaches about evolution, because your species must adapt and change in order to be competitive. The environment is dynamic. So every round brings new challenges and opportunities. You'll succeed if you can adapt to the ever-changing environment. The goal of evolution, and in real life, is to be the fittest. And it's the same with this game. So, Evolution, the Beginning is at all Target stores. Just look for it in the game section. There's a big dinosaur on the box. It's science without feeling like science, and that's the fun. Get it at Target today. Evolution, the Beginning. Okay, well, let's take another short commercial break. And after the break, we're going to continue a discussion of black holes. With us today, once again, is Dr. Jana Levin of Barnard College of Columbia University. And after the break, we're going to talk about the universe, the birth of the universe itself. Is it possible that we can use gravity waves to to peer into the instant of creation itself. We're talking today about some of the deepest mysteries in space and time. Gravity waves, Einstein's theory of relativity, and colliding black holes.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Here's Professor Michio Kaku.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. On Science Fantastic, we're talking about some of the deepest secrets of Albert Einstein's theory of gravity. We're talking about the Big Bang. We're talking about black holes and what happens when they collide. We're talking about gravity wave detectors. And our special guest today is Dr. Jana Levin. The book is called Black Hole Blues and Other Songs from Outer Space. She's a professor of physics and astronomy at Barnard College of Columbia University. A previous book was called How the Universe Got Its Spots, and she's also a novelist. How many physicists do you know write novels? The novel is called A Madman Dreams of Turing Machines. Well, Dr. Levin, let's now talk about the next generation of gravity wave detectors, even beyond LIGO. It'll take, of course, take many years to perfect the next generation, but some people think they will be space-based. Things like LISA, the Laser Interferometry Space Antenna. The European Space Agency is also getting in the game, making their proposals. And what they want to do is listen in some sense, on creation itself. So what are your thoughts about listening in on the Big Bang?
Yeah, so LIGO's, the range of, if you like, gravitational wave sounds that it's sensitive to overlays with the range of the piano. It literally happens to be in the human auditory range, although it's way too weak to pluck our eardrums. We couldn't hear it, but LISA would be detecting much lower notes. And we think that the Big Bang, when it happened, literally made a bang. It was this kind of cacophonous sound of ringing the drum of space-time, just in a noisy mess. But over the 13.8 billion years of its evolution and its expansion, those notes became lower and lower. And so now we would need a different instrument to detect such low notes. And LISA, one of the space-based instruments, aspires, among other things, maybe to pick up the remnant sound of the explosion of the creation of the universe. And it is, in fact, a space-based mission that will be many years off before it actually launches.
Now, I understand that when you turn on your TV set, especially an old one, you get that white noise, that snow on the TV screen. Mm-hmm. Some of that snow comes from Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, which is quite active, but some of it actually comes from the Big Bang itself. Radiation in the microwave range, which actually causes some of the snow you get on these old TV sets, which is incredible.
To be an old TV set with the bunny ear antennas, yeah.
Right.
Really old-fashioned.
Right. Not digital, but yeah, in some sense, you could pick up remnants of the Big Bang itself.
Yeah, some large percent, a few percent, I think, is actually the light left over from the Big Bang, because what confuses people is that the Big Bang didn't happen in one location in the universe. It happened everywhere. Everywhere we are was once the center of the explosion, that when the Big Bang happened, the entire space and time expanded, and we all live at what was once the center of the Big Bang.
Okay, now, we used to have this old picture of the Big Bang, that there was this explosion that set into motion eventually the galaxies and the stars and the planets. But there's a new wrinkle on this called inflation. Last year we had Dr. Alan Guth of MIT on the airwaves talking about inflation, but explained a little bit about how inflation has changed the picture a bit concerning the Big Bang.
Well, it's proposed by Alan Guth and others that a very tiny patch of the universe very early on, maybe a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang, a very tiny patch of the universe caught itself in a kind of high-energy state, almost like it caught fire, in an analogy, and it expanded incredibly rapidly. The universe began to expand at an accelerated rate, and so much so that the entire observable universe that we live in right now would have fit inside that tiny region that inflated. And it's a very interesting theory for many reasons. One is it sort of explains why the light that you just described that we get from the primordial universe left over from the Big Bang is the same temperature in one direction as it is in the opposite direction coming from 92 billion light years away. So that seems completely impossible if it's not for a model like inflation, which says, well, that was all once in a very, very tiny, tiny part of space, and it just grew in an inflated way to become so big. Inflation also explains the sort of seeds of large-scale structures like galaxies and clusters of galaxies. So it's a very important model, but we don't have great details about what caused this inflated expansion. We don't have great details about the source of the energy. And so that continues to remain a kind of area of inquiry and also a mystery.
Yeah, and also it has philosophical consequences, right? Because if the Big Bang was a quantum event, if you wait long enough, quantum events sometimes repeat themselves. And so it means that in some sense, Big Bangs could be happening all the time, someplace far, far away. There could be more explosions taking place, which leads us to a situation where we have parallel universes. This is almost science fiction, but isn't that where inflation is taking us?
Yeah, inflation has definitely foisted on us the necessity to consider the possibility of a multiverse, that our Big Bang wasn't the first and it certainly won't be the last, that there are other universes that have inflated, maybe some less successfully than ours, maybe some more successfully than ours, maybe some of those universes just collapse nearly instantly and don't house galaxies and people in them to look at the galaxies. And so that idea seems to be very much hand in hand with the idea of inflation. It becomes much harder to believe that this is the only universe.
Now, some people would say, bah, humbug. Science is based on testable, reproducible, and falsifiable results. And how do you falsify parallel universes? Well, unfortunately, we have run out of time. And if you want to find more about this thing, go to Jana Levin's website. And her book is called Black Hole Blues and Other Songs from Outer Space. So, Dr. Levin, thank you so much for being on Science Fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me. Fun to talk.
Okay, and once again, you have been listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. The number to call if you want to get on the air is 866-323-2129. Once again, leave your name, call letters of the radio station you're calling from, and the city you're calling from, and perhaps you can have your thoughts heard on over 100 radio stations that carry Science Fantastic. Take a copy of my latest book as well, The Future of the Mind, now in paperback form. 2 years ago, we hit number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list.
You're listening to Science Fantastic. Black holes, the cosmos, space, and time travel, medicine, robotics, science, and technology. Professor Michio Kaku, theoretical physicist, graduated from Harvard University's summa cum laude and first in his physics class. Received his PhD in physics from the University of California at Berkeley. And now, professor of physics at City University of New York for 30 years. His goal? To complete Einstein's dream of a theory of everything, to derive an equation, to summarize all the physical laws of the universe. The co-founder of string field theory, author of the international bestsellers Hyperspace, Visions, and Parallel Worlds, and voted as one of the 100 smartest people in New York, profiling the latest cutting-edge developments in science, which revolutionize our world and touch our lives. Now, Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku.
Is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. On Science Fantastic, we profile the amazing, jaw-dropping scientific discoveries which are revolutionizing our world and touching our lives. And in this hour, once again, we're going to throw the lines open because this hour is your hour. This is the time when you can ask that question, make that comment that you've always been wanting to ask but never had the courage. Well, you can give us a call at the following number, 866 323-2129. And perhaps your thoughts will be heard on over 100 radio stations that carry science. Fantastic. So write that number down, 866-323-2129. That number is available 24/7, anytime, day or night. Call that number. You'll get a recording. Simply record your name, call letters of the radio station you're calling from, and the city you're calling from, and perhaps you can get on over 100 radio stations that carry science. Fantastic. So let's say it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden you get that brainstorm of a lifetime, and you're just dying to talk to somebody about it, but hey, it's just you and the radio, just you and the TV set. Well, you can give me a call. You can call 866-323-2129. Or maybe you're having dinner with the kids and they ask you a homework question that leaves you stumped. What are you going to do? You're going to get to the telephones, call 866-323-2129, and why not put your kids on the radio? Why not have them ask a question or make a comment about science on over 100 radio stations that carry science? Fantastic. So remember, this hour is your hour. It's a time when you can give us a call and have your thoughts heard on national radio. And once again, if you want to follow what I'm doing, go to my website. It's mkaku.org, mkaku.org. And you can also go to my Facebook site, Michio Kaku. We have almost now 3 million people on Facebook. If you go to my Twitter account, we have about 300,000 people on Twitter. But the main site is the website, mkaku.org, mkaku.org. And also there's a complete list of all the radio stations that carry Science Fantastic on the website. So give us a call. Okay, well, without further ado, let's move right along and take the first listener phone call.
Hi, Professor Kaku. First of all, I'd like to say I'm calling from Jackson, Mississippi. I'm not sure of the radio station. And second, I would love to say that I love watching you on the universe. I watch you on your channel all the time. But my question is, what do you actually believe gravity is? I know it's a complicated question. I know we still ain't figured it out, but I'd just like to hear what you have to say about it. Thanks.
Well, you asked one of the most difficult questions in the universe, and that is, what is gravity? Ironically, it was gravity that was the first force to be more or less described mathematically by Isaac Newton back in the 1600s. But there was a problem with Newton's equations. When you write down Newton's equations, you realize that gravity spreads infinitely fast throughout the universe. So if the sun were to disappear right now, if the sun were to disappear, it would affect the Earth immediately. We would be hurled into outer space instantly. Well, there's a defect there, and the defect is that there's no mention of the speed of light. We see no deviation from Einstein's theory in the laboratory, and Einstein says nothing can go faster than the speed of light. Even gravity cannot go faster than the speed of light. So Einstein had to introduce a new picture. He replaced this idea of an instantaneous force that could spread instantly throughout the universe, and he replaced it with a fabric, so that if the sun were to disappear right now, the ripples of that titanic disappearance would then permeate around the universe, just like waves on a pond emanate from the place where the stone first hits the pond. Well, now we have the quantum theory, and the quantum theory says, no, this can't be right, because forces are carried by particles. And so we have to take Einstein's theory and bust it up into little particles called gravitons. Unfortunately, gravitons have never been seen in nature. We know they must exist. And gravitons create waves. Now, we've seen those waves. These waves are called gravity waves, and they were seen just a few months ago, making headlines around the world. But these gravitons, that is the origin of these waves, little particles of gravity, have not yet been seen in the laboratory. And it may take many decades before we have instruments sensitive enough to pick up gravity waves. Now, why is that important? Because that would give us a unified field theory of everything. So the short answer to your question is, we don't really know. However, the leading theory is that these gravitons are actually tiny little vibrating strings. So think of a rubber band. A rubber band vibrates, creates all the particles of the known universe, but from a distance, the rubber band looks like a dot. That is a graviton. And that's how we introduce the quantum theory into Einstein's theory, by introducing little loops of gravity, little strings like rubber bands. And these rubber bands can vibrate at different frequencies, giving us all the material particles of the universe. Now, you may say to yourself, well, if that's the latest picture of gravity, then how come we don't win the Nobel Prize for this idea? Well, there's a catch. And the catch is that these strings cannot vibrate in ordinary 4 dimensions. They have to vibrate in 11-dimensional hyperspace. At that point, even physicists begin to roll their eyes into the heavens and say, what the hell did you just say? Well, that's what one of the predictions of string theory is, that these strings are in some sense magical. They cannot just vibrate in ordinary 4 dimensions, the dimension of Einstein, but 11-dimensional hyperspace. Now, we've seen no evidence of 11-dimensional hyperspace. However, we're looking at atom smashers around the world, especially the CERN atom smasher outside Geneva, Switzerland. We're beginning to conduct some of the first experiments looking for the presence of higher dimensions. And if these higher dimensions exist, then can parallel worlds also exist? In other words, parallel universes. They're not so far-fetched anymore. We think that perhaps in our universe, the speed of light is a constant, and we sort of know that the universe is expanding. But what about these other universes? Well, to find out more about these other universes, you may want to get a copy of my earlier book called Parallel Worlds, where I talk about the latest understanding of what is gravity. So such a simple question, why do things fall down? Such a simple question takes us into the realm of higher dimensions, parallel universe, and God knows what else. Okay, well, moving right along, let's move on and take the next listener phone call.
Hello, this is Gary in Great Falls, Montana. And I don't want to be a smart aleck about anything, but I think that zero gravity is easy to understand if you think about it as the center of everything. Zero gravity is in the center of our planet, and zero gravity is in the center of the sun, and that's what holds the solar system together, and that's why we don't want to see zero gravity in our planet, because I would imagine that temperature at zero gravity isn't too fun to be in at the center of our planet either. Anyway, that's I always was a simple-minded person, but that's kind of a simple idea for zero gravity. Anyway, thanks.
Well, you ask a very interesting question that even Isaac Newton asked himself 300 years ago, and that is, what is the gravity at the center of the Earth? Well, you see, at the center of the Earth, there's no direction because, of course, the Earth is a sphere, perfect sphere, let's say. There's no left, right, up, down, whatever. So at the center of the Earth, said Isaac Newton, gravity must be zero. Zero because of symmetry. Nothing else. At the center of the sun, gravity must be zero. At the center of the earth, gravity must be zero. But you see, that doesn't explain what happens away from the center, where of course most of the action takes place. We want to know what the gravity is at the earth, at Jupiter, at the different planets. And just to say that gravity is zero at the center of the earth doesn't explain what happens off-center. And that's where Isaac Newton's equations for gravity come in. Isaac Newton said that the gravitational force goes as 1 over r squared. So the farther you are from the center of the earth, the weaker gravity gets, except at the very center of the earth, where, as I mentioned, all the forces cancel out and there is zero gravity. So in other words, we need a theory not just at zero gravity. We need a theory at non-zero gravity, and that's where Isaac Newton's equations come in. And then even those equations have to be modified because they don't include the speed of light. Then we have to go to Einstein's theory. And even those theories have to be modified because they don't include Planck's constant, the constant that measures the strength of quantum forces. So you see that asking a very simple question about zero gravity immediately starts to put you into the realm of the universe itself. And again, if you want to know more about these things, get a copy of my book, Hyperspace, which is one of the first popular books ever written on string theory, or my other book, Parallel Worlds, which talks in detail about other universes. Okay, let's take a short commercial break. And after the break, let's continue with our dialogue. If you want to get on Science Fantastic, why don't you give us a call? The hotline number is 866-323-2129. Give us a call, leave your name, the call letters of the radio station you're calling from, and the city you're calling from, and perhaps you can have your thoughts heard on over 100 radio stations that carry Science Fantastic. So give us a call. Be part of the fun. Give us a call and have your thoughts heard on national radio.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
As a business owner, or CEO for that matter, are you frustrated with the money you're wasting on advertising? How do I know it's being wasted? Because you see your advertising as an expense. I started my company because I was tired of seeing passionate business owners waste advertising dollars. So what if I could show you how to make your advertising a profit center in 30 days, guaranteed? I know what you're thinking. That's bull. Then challenge me. At no cost to you, I'll show you how to make your advertising a profit center, not an expense. If this is important to you, call me. I'm Dan Glaviano.
If you spend $10,000 to $80,000 a month on advertising, Dan will show you how to make your advertising a profit center, not an expense. Dan only works with one business in any given category. Find out if your category is still available. Visit gottacalldan.com. gottacalldan.com. That's gottacalldan.com.
Hello, I'm Roy Masters. In spite of the fact I dislike asking for financial support from my listeners, I realize the consequence of failing to do so. I will have denied my listeners the second chance to express the grace of paying forward the benefits they received through my radio program and the Foundation of Human Understanding, the organization I founded over 50 years ago. Your support will make a vital difference with the pledge as little as 63 cents a day throughout this year. Consider a donation of $19.95 per month or whatever you can afford and help me help others, especially our returning heroes. So for the sake of the military and millions of broken lives, if you haven't done so already, pay it forward, the benefits which you've received throughout the years from one crying in the wilderness. Go to FHU.com/donate, FHU.com/donate. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
Do you worry a lot, whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent? Ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
Hello, here I am, Roy Masters, 55 years on talk radio and still saving lives. Please continue helping the Foundation of Human Understanding by simply donating $19.95 per month. Paying it forward plan will continue saving lives into the years to come. I'm a pioneer in helping our troops to overcome the ravages of PTSD without drugs. Go to FHU.com and then click on the donation page. That's FHU.com.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
Here is Professor Michio Kaku.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. The lines are open. This means that this is your hour. This is the time when you can get to the phones and call 866-323-2129. Leave your name, the call letters of the radio station you're calling from, and the city you're calling from. And perhaps your thoughts can be heard on national radio. And just remember, no question is, quote, too dumb or too stupid to put on national radio, because chances are, if you have a question, chances are that hundreds of other people have that identical same question. And just remember, sometimes the simplest, dumbest questions are the most profound questions of all. When Einstein was 16 years old, get this, when he was 16 years old, he asked himself a simple question which changed world history. It changed the course of World War II, changed the course of the Cold War, changed everything about what we know about the universe. The question asked by the 16-year-old child was, can you outrace a light beam? Such a simple question. The answer to that question, by the way, is no, because you can't go faster than the speed of light. But when Einstein understood this question and the answer to the question, he changed world history. Because what comes out of this equation is the atomic bomb, the sun, the stars, the Milky Way galaxy. This equation of Einstein equals mc squared lights up the universe. And it all came from a question asked by a 16-year-old child. Okay, well, moving right along. Once again, if you want to get on Science Fantastic, give us a call and be part of the fun. The number to call is 866-323-2129. Okay, once again, moving right along now, let's take the next listener phone call.
Who were the three greatest women of science, and what were their theories? Eugene.
Well, you ask an interesting question because there's so many to choose from. The first on the list would, of course, be Madame Curie. Madame Curie won 2 Nobel Prizes, not just one in physics, one in chemistry. And she helped to open up the whole realm of radioactivity. Radium, for example, is one of the elements discovered by her. Polonium is another. Curium, another element, was named after her. And so she ranks up there in terms of our understanding of the nuclear force. And there's so many other scientists who are perhaps less well known, but made a significant impact on the history of science. For example, Sophie Germain. Sophie Germain lived in France at the time of the French Revolution in the 1700s, a very dangerous time to live there. But she was very much enamored of science, and especially mathematics, but she was a woman and couldn't get published or even interact with other male mathematicians. So what she did was she impersonated a male. She took on a man's name, wrote letters to all the great mathematicians of the age, and they corresponded with her because they realized, oh my God, we have a prodigy here. And only later did they find out, oops, she's a woman. And when they did find out, well, there were some people who wouldn't invite her to different award ceremony. In fact, in one ceremony, she was given an award, but she couldn't even come to receive the award because women were not allowed at that ceremony. And also another woman who suffered from discrimination was Vera Rubin. Some people think that she is up for a Nobel Prize because she was one of the first people to alert us to the existence of dark matter. It turns out that the Milky Way galaxy spins too fast for its own good. Believe it or not, the Milky Way galaxy spins so fast it should fly apart, but there it is, stable for billions of years. So here we have this gigantic spiral in outer space. You see it every night when you look in the night sky, this huge disk. But what holds this disk together? Something alien, something new called dark matter. So many people think that Vera Rubin will possibly win the Nobel Prize for pointing the direction to what is called dark matter, which we now know is 10 times more plentiful than ordinary matter. So now I want to talk to you about evolution, the beginning. It's actually a board game. Yes, a new board game that you can play with your family, and it's called Evolution: The Beginning. A few months ago, the inventors of this game came by to visit. They showed me how to play, and I told them very clearly, I want to make sure that dear old Dad can play this game with his kids when they open it on Christmas morning. So we talked about the goal of Evolution: The Beginning. It's actually quite simple. Eat as much food as possible, because food counts for points in this game. To eat the food, each player takes turns creating and evolving their own species. You can create long-necked herbivores that eat plants, or create speedy carnivores that eat other organisms. There are hundreds of traits. It's up to you to decide what to create, and that's the fun. What I love is that Evolution: The Beginning is a game based on science. It actually teaches about evolution because your species must adapt and change in order to be competitive. The environment is dynamic, so every round brings new challenges and opportunities. You'll succeed if you can adapt to the ever-changing environment. The goal of evolution, and in real life, is to be the fittest, and it's the same with this game. So, Evolution: The Beginning is at all Target stores. Just look for it in the game section. There's a big dinosaur on the box. It's science without feeling like science, and that's the fun. Get it at Target today. Evolution: The Beginning. Okay, well, this is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. It's open mic, so give us a call at 866-323-2129 and have your question heard on over 100 radio stations that carry Science Fantastic. So, give us a call.
Try to stump him. But be warned, Professor Kaku is really smart. Like, whoa, this guy's smart. You're listening to Science Fantastic.
Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku, and this hour once again we're throwing the lines open, and this is where the fun begins. This is where you can be part of the program. So instead of simply sitting there listening to the radio, wondering what's really happening in the world, why not be part of what's happening in the world by giving us a call? The hotline number is right open 24/7. Anytime, day or night, you're not going to get a busy signal. Give us a call at 866-323-2129. And when the recording comes on, all we ask is that you leave your name, the call letters of your radio station, and the city you're calling from, and perhaps your thoughts can be heard on national radio. So once again, 866-323-2129 is the number to call. Okay, well, moving right along, let's take the next listener phone call.
Yeah, listening from Northeast Pennsylvania, WILK, and the sun will interest me the most. How it keeps, where the energy comes from, how it keeps shining, the diameter, and if it shines on the backside also. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, well, you ask a question that has fascinated the ancients ever since we looked at the night sky. Well, of course, when ancient humans began to domesticate fire, they thought, aha, maybe the sun is nothing but fire in the sky. So that was the first great theory that actually made some sense. But in the 1800s, scientists began to realize that, well, fire requires oxygen. You can calculate the amount of oxygen required to set the sun on fire. And when the calculation was done, they realized, oh my God, it turns out that the sun would have burnt out thousands of years ago, and there's no way that the sun could shine for millions to billions of years. And so we had a problem. And the problem is, what lights up the night sky? A new kind of force, a force beyond simply fire. And then along comes Einstein in 1905, who says, I think I have it. And that is E equals mc squared, meaning that even a small amount of m can create a large amount of E. A small amount of matter in the form of hydrogen can create enormous amounts of E in the form of sunlight. Then in the 1930s, Hans Bethe, who would win the Nobel Prize for this, sat down and worked out all the steps by which hydrogen fuses to create helium and basically creates all the known elements inside the sun. And so the sun is basically an oven that cooks hydrogen to create helium, then cooks helium to create lithium, and on up the periodic chart. And so we now had a mechanism by which we can calculate the amount of energy created by the sun, and it worked out perfectly. So we now realize that the sun is a hydrogen bomb, a gigantic hydrogen bomb. It doesn't blow apart completely because gravity holds it together. So the sun is, in some sense, a stable object because gravity wants to compress the sun, but the nuclear force wants to blow the sun apart. And the two forces just match each other, and so we get equilibrium, and that's why the sun is stable, giving us sunlight. It is spherical because gravity attracts spherically. Gravity attracts evenly. That's why the sun is round, for example. And it releases energy via Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared. In fact, when I was a grad student years ago at the University of California at Berkeley getting my PhD, my roommate was an astronomy grad student. And in the morning, he would make some wisecracks and he would say, I'm going to cook a star today. I'm going to put a star in the oven. And when he came home at night, he said, well, I just took the star out of the oven. Well, I thought my roommate was nuts. I mean, how can you put a star in the oven? And then I asked him one day, and he explained to me. We know so much about the equations for sun that we can put the equations in the morning into the computer, and by night we can have a mature star. We can actually cook a star in the memory of a computer. Okay, well, let's take a short commercial break, and after the break we're going to continue our discussion with Open Mike on Science Fantastic. Give us a call. The hotline number is 866-323-2129. Be part of the fun. Just don't sit there listening to the radio. Get to the phones and give us a call at 866-323-2129 and have your thoughts heard on National Radio.
You're listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. For more information on this and other great talk programs, go to talkradionetwork.com.
I'm Jim LeBlanc with Volunteers of America. When it comes to advertising, you gotta call Dan.
I'm Mark Jones with SunPro Solar. If you're not getting a significant return on your advertising investment, you gotta call Dan.
I'm Blair Cottingham with United Rentals. If you're not happy with the results of your advertising, you gotta call Dan.
Generally, we work with two types of clients. Those who advertise and are worried about their return on investment, or those who are frustrated about not getting a better return on investment. You probably don't fall into either of these categories, but if you do, call me. I'm Dan Glaviano.
If you spend $10,000 to $80,000 a month on advertising, Dan will show you how to make your advertising a profit center, not an expense. Dan only works with one business in any given category. Find out if your category is still available. Visit gottacalldan.com. gottacalldan.com. That's gottacalldan.com.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
Hello, my name is Roy Masters. I'm an English veteran who's been witness to history and proud to become an American citizen. Because in America, free thought was encouraged and being truthful mattered more than being nice. My America was truly politically incorrect in all the best ways, which is why we were blessed. But things have changed, and Americans don't think American anymore. Even though I still speak with an English accent, my heart thinks American, my voice speaks American, and that is freedom. Please join me on my daily radio show Advice Line, Monday through Friday, and I will help you to reclaim our country. Let me help you find the courage to think and speak American again. Please download my radio show app, available now at the Apple App Store and Android Google Play. Thank you.
The Foundation of Human Understanding is a 501c3 church.
Here is Professor Michio Kaku.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. It's open mic in this hour, meaning that you can get to the telephone and give us a call at 866-323-2129. And why don't you become part of the fun? Instead of just listening to the radio, why not be part of the radio by giving us a call at 866-323-2129. Let's say you're just walking down the street and wondering, what does it all mean? Where does everything come from? The mountains, the sky, the oceans. Where did life come from? What about what's out there in outer space? Is there life out there in the universe? These questions are all fair game on Science Fantastic. All you have to do is to get to the phone and give us a call at 866-323-2129. Leave your name, the call letters of the radio station you're calling from, and the city you're calling from, and perhaps you can have your thoughts heard on Science Fantastic. So give us a call. And also check out my website. My website is mkaku.org, mkaku.org. We have over almost 3 million people following us on Facebook, 300,000 people following us on Twitter, and maybe you'll be there at my next book signing. My latest book is called The Future of the Mind: Telepathy, Telekinesis, Mind Reading, Recording Memories. All the stuff you see in the movies, now we can do it in the laboratory. So find out about this by getting a copy of my latest book, The Future of the Mind. Okay, well, moving right along now, let's take the next listener phone call.
Hi, my name is Frank, W-I-L-K, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. My question is that when do you anticipate when NASA would be able to put a spacecraft into space where there won't be no booster rockets, there'll just be one spacecraft itself, land like on, they say, the moon, and return to Earth, and without no extra booster rockets or just one spacecraft? Thank you very much. Have a good day. Your show is the best. Thank you.
Well, you ask an embarrassing question because scientists for the last century or so have been using chemical rockets to go into outer space. So in other words, we have to carry our fuel with us, which is, if you think about it, a waste of fuel, because the fuel has to have enough fuel to carry itself into outer space. And if you think about it, most of the rocket's weight is fuel. Therefore, if you could jettison the empty canisters, you could save on the cost of the rocket, and that's why we have booster rockets. So the booster rocket would be the first stage of our rocket ship, and the last stages would be the actual payload. That's been the way it's been with rocketry for almost 100 years. But NASA is slowly catching up to the idea that maybe we should have another kind of rocket without having to use these booster rockets. However, here's where it gets rather iffy, because these alternative to chemical rockets are not as efficient as chemical rockets, but let's review some of them. One of them is the plasma ion rocket. Instead of shooting out chemicals, it shoots out ions. That's great, but the amount of ions that you can send out is very, very thin. So we don't expect to have them anytime soon. And then we have laser rockets, and I'll say a few things about laser rockets after the break. Laser rockets have no booster rockets at all. So once again, you've been listening to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Give us a call. The hotline number is 866-323-2129. And after the break, we'll talk about the next generation of rockets beyond the chemical rockets. Give us a call at 866-323-2129 is the number to call.
This is Science Fantastic.
Welcome back to Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Once again, we're going to throw the lines open because this hour is your hour. This is the time when you can get to the phones and call the magic number, 866-323-2129. And perhaps your thoughts will be heard on over 100 radio stations that carry Science Fantastic. Well, before the break, we had a simple question, and that is, what will replace the booster rocket? Well, it's not such an easy question because we've been wedded to chemical rockets for almost 100 years. We're playing with other kinds of rockets, like, for example, the plasma ion engine. The plasma ion engine shoots out ions instead of hot chemicals. In principle, they can operate for years at a time instead of just a few minutes, which is the case for ordinary booster rockets. The catch there is that ion engines produce very small amounts of thrust. For long periods of time, of course, like for years in principle, but the total amount of thrust is quite small. And therefore, you don't get the blast of energy that you get with an ordinary chemical rocket. The next generation of rockets, perhaps beyond ion engine, is laser-fired engine. We get a sail made out of, let's say, some kind of reinforced tinfoil, and we shoot a laser beam on the foil. The foil acts like a parachute. By blasting the tinfoil with enough light energy, it'll propel it. In fact, Stephen Hawking was at a press conference just last month where he talked about sending a starship that would go not just around the Earth, but to the stars, propelled by gigantic banks of laser beams fired at a parachute containing a small payload, a small little chip, which would then go to the stars and take photographs and things like that. Well, that sounds like a great idea, right? But what's the catch? There's always a catch someplace. And the catch there is that the laser beam has to be enormous in terms of energy, 100 megawatts. 100 gigawatts of energy. That's the equivalent of 100 nuclear power plants. So think of having an array of 100 nuclear power plants blasting its energy into outer space, inflating a parachute that then hurls a small payload, a small chip, near the speed of light to a distant star. And so you can see immediately that, well, it sounds like a great idea, right? Rockets without booster rockets, but the practical details of that are pretty daunting. And we don't expect plasma rockets to go into regular use for a few more decades. And perhaps by the end of the century, will have enough resources to send laser payloads into outer space. Okay, well, let's move on to the next listener phone call.
Hello, my name is Peter, and given that you wrote a book about neurology, basically, I was wondering about the future of the mind and an extension of the work of Jose Delgado, who claimed in the CNN report back in the 80s, I believe it was, that he was able to affect the thought processes of monkeys with radio frequencies. There's been a lot of talk about that now, so that's what I'd like to talk about. So my name is Pete. Bye.
Well, you ask an interesting question because, yes, back in the, as far back as the 60s, scientists were experimenting with monkeys, not using radio, but actually using wires to connect them to mechanical devices. In one situation, which was photographed and recorded, a bull had electrodes placed in his brain, and then it was, in fact, connected with radio to a switch. And in one famous experiment, a Yale professor puts on the uniform of a matador and goes into the bull ring with a live bull. As the live bull starts to get aggravated and lunges at the Yale professor takes out a button, pushes the button, and stops the bull dead in its tracks. An incredible feat, but certainly possible because now we know the basic outlines of the brain. We know, for example, where in the brain you have to electrify in order to get the bull to stop. In fact, we have maps of the brain now, maps of the brain where we know that this part of the brain connects to your left hand, that part of the brain connects to your right hand, and by putting electricity in these spots, you can actually make your left hand and right hand move. In fact, the military is now backing this. We're not just talking about scientists at Yale University, but $150 million has been allocated by the United States Pentagon to create an Iron Man outfit. An Iron Man outfit controlled electronically by chips in the human brain that then allow the brain to control an exoskeleton so that paralyzed people can now walk again. And that's just one of several experiments that I mentioned in my book, The Future of the Mind. So Iron Man is not so far-fetched. And then if you connect the mind, the hippocampus of the brain, to the internet, you can actually send memories. Memories can be sent electronically. Here's how you do it. You put 2 electrons on either side of the hippocampus located at the center of the brain, and then you train a mouse, for example, to perform a task. You record the signals that go across that part of the brain, the hippocampus. You record it like a tape recorder. Later, you play it back. You play the same impulses back into the brain of the mouse, and bingo, the mouse executes that very same feat. Well, these and many other incredible discoveries are mentioned in my book, The Future of the Mind. So once again, go to my website, mkaku.org, where perhaps one day I'll be signing your copy of The Future of the Mind. Well, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Once again, this is Science Fantastic with Professor Michio Kaku. Give us a call. The hotline number is 866-323-2129. Once again, leave your name, the call letters of the radio station, and the city you're calling from, and perhaps your thoughts will be heard on over 100 radio stations that carry Science Fantastic. So once again, stay tuned every week on Science Fantastic as we explore the cutting edge of science. Good day.